Endoseal MTA is a paste-type root canal sealer that has excellent physical and biological properties of MTA. It is pre-mixed and pre-loaded in a syringe that allows direct application of the sealer into the root canal. Very interesting. K-Quo Pro presents Endoseal MTA by Marucci. So this is a South Korean branded biomaterial and sealer. It is very interesting because it is pre-mixed MTA that is syringeable. So of course, the first thing that people might think of will be BC Sealer by Brasseler. They do share very similar properties, and in some cases, one would argue that the Endoseal MTA might have even better properties. So Endoseal MTA is a newer material. I think it started in 2012, and in comparison to BC Sealer by Brasseler, which is closer to 2007, there's actually still some literature or significant amounts of literature on this one as well, even though it's developed a little bit more recently. So as far as ideal sealers go, and this is a little bit of an adaptation of Grossman's list of ideal properties and modernized. And for me, the top 5 are biocompatibility, sealability, handling, radiopacity, and antimicrobial properties. Now as the 6th and bonus property, it's not allowing tooth discoloration, but I kind of reserve that towards the end because it's not as important than those top 5 in my opinion. So with those in mind, a lot of the BC Sealer properties that I've reviewed before are there. And for me, in a way, it's kind of like the gold standard because they're the more popular bioceramic MTA-based sealer in the market. So this is an interesting comparison. So let's start with biocompatibility. So with biocompatibility, there's a couple papers that I really like when I'm reading this. And the first one is about a implanted subcutaneous material comparison in rats. So there's different sealers used. There's ProRoot MTA, there's Endoseal MTA, as well as H+. And of course, in the end, over time, they have to sacrifice the rats and view the amount of inflammation histologically. And it turns out the Endoseal MTA is at similar properties as ProRoot MTA and certainly less inflammation compared to H+. That's a big check mark for biocompatibility. A second study is more in vitro. They simulated a root canal system and they contacted the sealer to fibroblast populations to see how it's still able to interact and propagate. And it was a comparison between Endoseal MTA and BC Sealer primarily, and in the end, they share similar properties. So that's another check mark to biocompatibility. Let's talk about the second property. The second property, sealability, is important, of course. Thus the name, a sealer. So traditionally, a sealer was important because gutta percha shrinks upon heat, and in a way, the sealer was important to fill in the gaps. There's actually a specific study on the amount of bacterial leakage. So the way this in vitro study occurred was they used fluorescent markers for E. faecalis over time to see how different sealers and obturation methods leaked. And in this case with Endoseal MTA, it did really well in comparison to H+. So that's another check mark for sealability. The other thing is by nature, it does require hydration for it to set. And because of that, it does expand a little bit. So that's a good thing. For a sealer, I'll take any sort of expansion over shrinkage for sure. So that's another benefit for sealability. The other important aspect of sealability is not being able to wash out over time, dissolution under set conditions. So that's one of the benefits of BC Sealer, is that once it's set, it is set. It won't be washed out or resorbed by the body. This is similar. It's an MTA-like material, and because of that, once it's set, it will set and not be dissolved as well. So the next one is the most interesting comparison to BC Sealer, in my opinion. It is the handling. So there's a couple of main differences between the two. The first one is that the setting time. This sets within minutes. We're talking about 12 to 15 minutes in setting time, and that's completely different from BC Sealer, which takes hours to set. And the reason why this could be significant is that if you are using this sealer for peripheral care, it's more feasible to do it because you can apply it to the perforation, and then within minutes it would set and allow you to restore it permanently right away, rather than, let's say, you use MTA where you have to let it sit for several hours, bring the patient back, and then restore, or in comparison to BC Sealer where it's difficult to apply since it's still in like a liquid state. So it's not a means where you can easily restore even temporarily. So the setting time does place significance in that sort of manner in a positive way, but of course it could be a negative way if you move like more slowly and you apply in the canals and you take a little bit more time to apply the master cone. So there's give and take there, but the benefit is certainly that you'll be able to use it in perf repairs, and you have the peace of mind that the sealer will set for sure. I think there was a 2017 study on BC Sealer that stated that it doesn't even set upon many days. So whether or not that's clinically significant is under debate, but with this, there's no debate at all on its setability. It will set. The other important aspect of handling is your ability to apply it into the canals. Now with this one, I do it a little bit differently than BC Sealer. BC Sealer is a little bit thicker. I tend to like the scoop method where you apply it on the master cone and then place it intracanal. With this, I actually like to directly apply it into the canals because it flows really well, even more so in comparison to H+. So even if you want to do the scoop method, it would just flow flat on a piece of paper. It'll be very difficult to apply any sort of significant amount of the Endoseal MTA to be able to get it into the canal. So I directly inject into the canals. So the benefit of this flow ability is that some will argue that you'll be able to get it into lateral canals and flow into the isthmuses of connecting canals. So whether or not that is also clinically significant, that's under debate, but that's another advantage and a difference in comparison to BC Sealer. The other aspect of being able to handle it really well is when you're cleaning up the chamber following use. You're trying to remove the excess amount of Endoseal MTA. It actually quickly washes away when you're cleaning out the chamber. So even though it completely sets and does not resorb or become washed out, when it's unset and you have remains left in the chamber, it's actually a good thing to be able to quickly wash out without having to use several micro brushes or ultrasonics. The other part is important, less so for its clinical significance, but more so for communication amongst practitioners, and that's radiopacity. I hate to include this because we don't want to judge a root canal by its x-ray, but in a way it's become a tradition. So the great thing of Endoseal MTA is that it is statistically very radiopaque. It is just as radiopaque as H+, and statistically it's actually supposed to be twice that of BC Sealer. Now clinically, in cases that I've done with this in comparison to BC Sealer, it doesn't just jump out, it's similar, but statistically, given the same volume, this is actually about twice more radiopaque than BC Sealer and very similar to H+. H+ is one of the more radiopaque sealers out there. And antimicrobial is included as well. It's nice to have a sealer, and a good comfort of mind to know that you have something that can continue to remove bacteria over time. We all know that the cleaning and shaping upon instrumentation, irrigation, and even better, active irrigation is the most important. So the antimicrobial properties of a sealer would be a nice bonus. In this case, just like BC Sealer, this has a high pH to it, and so by default, that has some antimicrobial properties. That's a very good thing. So the other property that I call it as a bonus is color. So the problem with MTA previously, and someone would argue BC Sealer or Bioceramic putty or paste, are that it causes tooth discoloration. And MTA has tried to beat that with white MTA, and some claim BC Sealer and BC putty are supposed to be better to prevent tooth coloration, but in some sense, especially with MTA, there's papers and anecdotal evidence of tooth discoloration with those materials. Now this is not as out there long enough for any anecdotal comments as far as tooth discoloration, but I did find a paper that compared it to ProRoot MTA and H+, and in that particular in vitro settings, Endoseal MTA actually did really well, better than ProRoot MTA. I don't remember if it's white or gray, I know that plays a difference, but with that said, it's supposed to be just as good as far as amount of tooth coloration with H+. It's certainly better than ProRoot MTA. So overall, on paper and in my early impressions, it certainly has all the check marks of the ideal sealer. As far as it being able to keep this all in the long term, along with follow-up literature, it's left to be out there, but it's certainly a great start.